So it was really incredible to see the Andes.
South America.
One of my bucket list as a geologist is to see rocks.
Mm-hmm.
No, wait. There was more to it than that.
Welcome to Wonder, the Planet Earth podcast for the curious. I'm Holly Cook, Earth scientist, looking at Dr. Anthony Reid, fellow Earth scientist. Anthony, it's been, 5 months since we've been in this studio together?
Too long, Holly, too long.
Unbelievable.
Life gets busy.
Totally. It gets exciting. And so firstly, thanks to everybody who's come along on the journey. I know that sounds a bit, woo-woo, but seriously, this Wonder podcast has been probably the most exciting thing in my life. I'm sure yours too. Probably this science thing on the side that we get to do.
Yep.
But the support that we've been shown by various communities is absolutely heartwarming.
It is.
You've encouraged us back to the studio in February.
It took a little while. We were pretty busy late last year. A lot of things happening. But yeah, we just had such great feedback, really friendly, conversations from even, I guess our family and friends have been pretty supportive too.
Oh yeah, my mum's like, "You're doing great, sweetie."
Well, you don't want to rely on your mum only on your feedback. But we've had people, genuinely people getting in touch and saying great stuff, and they wanted to hear more. And so, yeah, we were definitely inspired to come back and keep sort of telling those stories and following our own curiosity.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's kind of what we plan on doing throughout 2025. I know it was a bit of a hiatus, but, if things go our way, and, I'm going to make sure they do, hopefully this is a year where we've got a bit more of a presence. So thanks for sticking with us. But okay, so where can we begin? 5 months, Anthony. I think you've caught a couple planes.
Yes.
What planes have you been catching?
Yes. Well, been very busy. Work's been very busy. I've got a fantastic job, and I've been doing some field work over in South America with the company Fleet Space Technologies that I work for, and yeah, amazing. Never had a chance to go there before, so it was really incredible to see the Andes.
South America.
One of my bucket list as a geologist is to see rocks.
Mm-hmm.
No, wait. There was more to it than that. To see rocks in the place that they were named from. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
So this is one of the
andesite.
Thank you. The classic rock type.
Oh, she's good.
She's good. The classic rock. Type of volcanic rock is andesite, has a particular, chemical and kind of tectonic sort of significance. But andesite is, as Holly has said, is named after the Andes. And I just thought it was so cool. We went up to sort of central parts of Chile, and my colleague from the organisation took us out to do some field work. We climbed up a mountain, and there it was. I was in the Andes looking at andesite, and it was just like, yes.
Life's good.
Life is good. Life is really good. Yeah, it's an amazing place, amazing country, amazing geography. One of the standout moments was visiting parts of the Atacama Desert. Do you know?
I heard that's a very foreign place in terms of what I would know here in South Australia. Isn't it really bright?
The sun is very bright because there's not a cloud in the sky. And I thought, I actually genuinely thought that being in Australian and particularly South Australia,
deserts.
We know what deserts are.
Come on now. Do we?
Holy moly. Just these pathetic little cactus barely clinging on.
Or alternatively, the most impressive little cactuses.
I saw carnivorous plant, like a little pitcher plant in the bottom of a creek somewhere.
Goodness.
Yeah, just fascinating. Anyway, obviously not much vegetation, because when we go into our deserts out
There's
here,
scrub.
There's actually quite a lot of vegetation in the deserts in Central Australia. Obviously, there are places where there's just, endless sand or endless sort of gibber of, rocks and stony ground at the surface. But there's a lot of scrub out in Central Australia or in Australian deserts.
Mm.
But in the Atacama, not so much.
Mm.
Incredible.
Fantastic.
Really, my mind was blown. And the final part of that story is to mention that I took a flight from a place called Copiapó, which is a sort of a mining town in central Chile, back to Santiago. And it was incredible timing, and sometimes you just get lucky and you get the window seat. I got the window seat.
Nice.
And I was flying south along the axis of the Andes.
Oh, my gosh.
As the sun was setting in the west. So we had the beautiful sunset over the Andes, and the moon was rising up over the Andes. So it was just this most
majestic,
cosmic.
Truly.
Truly. Incredible landscape. So I feel incredibly fortunate to. But also, I'm sitting there contemplating the tectonic forces that go into building this landscape, and I can visualize the subduction zone and, all the processes that are building this incredible mountains. It's just, I feel so lucky.
That's incredible. Thank you for sharing. And we'll have to get some pickies up because I think I've seen some photos around on your Instagram. But we're just going to have to smash some.
Yeah, we
photos.
could share a couple.
I can feel like I came in the suitcase in the bottom of the plane.
But you've been travelling a little bit too, Ollie.
Yeah,
I know.
Maybe a bit too much, given I'm still in the first 6 months of starting this PhD, and I've been on more planes maybe than I've been on in the last 2 years. So, hope the supervisor listening.
Yeah,
too hard.
But that's part of starting a PhD.
Oh, totally.
What a journey.
So yeah, I've been back to the Canadian Rockies, it's such a treat to go there every time. Like that was actually just a family holiday. We love being out in the mountains, love being out in the snow. Just again, super special, super, super lucky to be able to get back out there. Had a little foray into the Whitsundays. I was blown away at all the volcanics at the Whitsundays. And in and around,
to your life.
I know.
But so Canada is a family connection, right?
Totally. Dad's from Nova Scotia, so I've got a long family line out of the Maritimes provinces in Nova Scotia. Though it was
you didn't go there.
Correct. But moving past the roundabout justification.
That's right.
So no, I've had a pretty specky last few months. I'd love to bring in some of the rocks that I'm working on for my PhD. I won't even get into it too much. We'll
have a conversation about that later.
Other than to say like, gosh, life is big. That's the only thing I can really comment on. Life is big, and I feel so deeply peaceful about where I'm at, to be honest. So that's a beautiful feeling.
So how about the journey of discovery in this PhD? How are you looking forward to? What are you looking forward to?
Learning. It's always just in the learning. Like the idea of asking questions, like thinking a lot about how you ask a question matters. Like epistemics, like the whole concept of what knowledge is and what a question is, and how do answers frame questions in a way that we're not even sure, we're not even perceiving. Like I'm actually in this stage, I'm really loving learning as much as possible, but at the same time understanding what even my framework of knowledge is and question asking is to begin with. But your PhD, this is going to be my fantastic sort of meander into what I'd like to talk about with you today. Your PhD field site last year. What? So I have to kick in the guts.
How old I am again.
Your PhD field site was Eastern Tibet. And we haven't actually spoken a lot about you, Anthony, as a geologist. And the reason I bring up Tibet is because there's actually been some huge devastation there over the last couple months with some natural disasters. And I'd like to push those things to you and ask you, can you help us navigate that?
So this is the segment we like to call the GeoGist.
Correct. The GeoGist. How good's that? How good is that?
We're going to try and kind of cover, like, on a kind of a current affairs podcast. They have plenty of things going on every day in the world of politics and news and stuff like that. Okay, but in a geo-focused podcast, like planet Earth kind of moves a bit slower, so there's not necessarily something happening every day.
Well, it's
although there is.
Earth is the ultimate 24/7 news. However, you don't need to hear me and you find stories about mud and dirt.
That's it.
Moving around the place.
Yeah, that's it. Anyway, so has been some happenings lately, and I guess for me, my personal connection with Tibet through my PhD and colleagues and friends of mine, I pay attention to what happens in that region, what happens in Tibet in particular. And in January, there was quite a big earthquake, 7.1 on the Richter scale. So that's pretty big. That's a serious earthquake. And that happened in sort of southern Tibet. And many thousands of homes were destroyed. Obviously, this is it's a rural area. It's not highly populated. It's very kind of low rainfall. It's in the rain shadow of the Himalayas.
Okay.
So it's like if you stood on Mount Everest, you'd look out towards the region just where this earthquake occurred. And it's very rural, like I said, not a lot of rainfall. But people live there, and reports were some number of hundreds of people unfortunately died because of the damage, but thousands of structures and buildings and homes were destroyed as well. So I really feel for those people. Any kind of natural disaster is terrible, and in this case, they're dealing with the winter.
Gosh.
I think, of course, winter is a struggle.
I find 10 degrees a struggle, let alone after a 7.1 earthquake.
Yeah, and you're
Tibet.
Sleeping in Tibet.
Correct.
In a tent in Tibet. They're tough people. I'm sure that they survive and they're resilient and so on. But yeah, just feel for them. The geology of the earthquake zone is absolutely fascinating.
This is it, because
So-
when you sent me this link while I was in Canada and went, goodness me, have you seen this news? I sort of, in my holiday brain went, I don't immediately understand why there might be such a huge earthquake in Tibet rather than, say, in where the mountains are building. Like, I don't know, it feels slightly counterintuitive to maybe that first order geology hat that we have on.
Interesting. So Tibet is the biggest plateau on Earth. So a plateau is an area of uplifted rock and landscape. And the average elevation of Tibet is about 4 kilometers, 4,000 meters.
The elevation.
The average elevation. So, some of the valleys you'll go down to 3, or maybe in the eastern parts down to 2,000 or something like that, which is still quite high coming from Adelaide.
Mount Lofty's pretty good. What are you talking about?
We can stroll up Mount Lofty, which for people who don't know is about 750 metres, and we call that Mount, but it's not. It's just a little hill. Anyway, in Tibet, average elevation is 4,000 metres. So there's obviously lots of massive mountains in the region. And of course, the Himalayas, biggest mountain range with most number of 8,000 peaks on the planet.
Yeah.
So why is it there is the really interesting question.
Plates are the plates are crashing there. I should say we know that the plates are crashing.
Yes, they have been for 50 million years or so since India sort of slammed into Asia.
There's been problems.
And has caused all sorts of problems in the kind of rearrangement of plate tectonics, in part because of that huge collision. And in fact, in Australia, we still feel the effects of that collision in some sense because the Australian plate is connected to India. It is the Indo-Australian plate, so there's actually connections.
Sandra McLaren called it a jelly bean, if I remember that.
It's shaped like a jelly bean.
Yeah.
It is, yeah. Anyway, on the Indian side, India has been ploughing into Asia, and recent research is suggesting that that it started off fast, which makes a lot of sense. It was ploughing across with nothing but ocean in front of it. Then it collided with the continent and it started to slow down. It's getting slower and slower. So there is this kind of change to the way this mountain building event and process has happened over time, like over 50 million years. Okay, just to clarify,
not over 5 months.
When people like me say time, okay, we mean
real time,
millions and millions of years. So okay, but earthquakes happen obviously quite quickly, and that is like an instantaneous effect of this major sort of tectonic process. Now, okay, so when you collide two things together, what you'd expect to find is that you get faults, which are basically fractures or broken bits of rock, breakages of the rock. You'd expect to find that what happens is India goes underneath Asia, and so you get this kind of effect of pushing Asia up over India, which is why the Himalayas is there. That's being pushed up, scraped up, and pushed up over the Indian kind of continent as India is being pulled down and pushed and pulled down. Okay, that makes sense, right? Now stay with me. This earthquake. So the type of fault that we expect to see in this, what we call a collisional origin, it's called reverse or thrust. Reverse because you get this sort of movement where
something's going on top of something else.
Goes on top of something else. Yeah, someone goes on top of something else. Exactly. So that's called a reverse or a thrust in geological terminology. But in Tibet, this particular earthquake happened for exactly the opposite reason. Right. One side of the fault moved down relative to the other.
In a place where mountains are being built because things are pushing on top of each other.
Correct. So there's this really curious relationship between some areas of the crust being pushed together and some areas being pulled apart.
How's it possible? Like in what little peculiar local condition?
So this is to me, this is one of the most fascinating things. It's when you think about how dynamic the Earth is and how hot it can get at depth and how plastic the rocks can actually get over time. What you've got is kind of the mountain mass growing, if you like, but when it grows and it pops up, when it grows, it becomes heavy. And the one thing that all of us are constrained by is gravity. Even mountains are constrained by gravity. So in some respects, actually, while the plateau is growing, it's also pulling apart. It's also the word is collapse is the word we use. It's saying the mountain is growing, but at the same time, because it's so high, it is actually collapsing under its own weight. So it means the surrounding, like and I mean like far-field, big pieces of the Asian continent are not strong enough to support this huge amount of mass which is being uplifted in the whole Tibetan region. And so actually you get this whole series of extensional fault systems which run in a north-south orientation across the whole Tibetan Plateau. And this is one of these big fault zones that failed recently in Dingri, is one of these faults where because it's being held up, you kind of imagine this kind of pushing this sloppy kind of rocky mass, and we're pushing it in this orientation, but it gets to a certain point where even pushing on it, we can't sustain that elevation and it starts to collapse and kind of ooze out. And there's a great paper written in the 2000, back in the good old days.
Plug it. We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, there's a fantastic paper, and it's called Topographic Ooze.
Oh,
it's just
spectacular.
It's just chef's kiss of a description.
It's literally the word I had in mind, like thinking about, and I'm glad that you brought scale into it because I was on the wrong scale. I was sitting here actually on the wrong scale with you. I was thinking, so the mountains, it gets too heavy. That's, okay, fair enough. I hadn't thought of that, but it's getting too heavy and it's like, oh God, it's like unbuckling its belt or something and just like kind of
I can
splashing out around. I haven't had brekkie yet, so I'm all right. Not of my own free will. I am hungry. But the sort of more on a continental scale, like you talk about, it's more like that. Is the right word? Like that continental, like lithosphere can't actually really sustain the level of weight that it's just been shoved, right. That's just been thrust up on, that's just
pushed up into it. Oh yeah, or sort of smooshed into it. Geology is not that complicated. You can kind of visualize it as kind of the bits, and as you get deeper, they're more malleable, they're more ductile, they're more like toothpaste. As you get in shallower, they're more brittle, so anything gets pushed, it kind of cracks. So this is a shallow earthquake in Tibet.
It's huge.
Which cracked, yeah. If something cracks, only about 10 kilometres deep, so that's very much in the brittle zone. So it would have been, it would have been devastating to be part of that and to feel that earth shaking. Footage of earthquakes is always incredibly scary, so we've got to keep that in mind.
Absolutely.
But the broader tectonic system is compressional, but in some parts it's actually being pulled apart extensional at the same time, which I just love that juxtaposition of these two incredible forces which build the planet that we live on. Yeah,
wow. On this idea of like big earthquakes and hazards and how do you actually predict them, what I dwell on a little bit, what I find fascinating about earthquakes is that they are like, as a system, as like an Earth system, you can think about them in interesting ways. There's like, we talk about the Richter scale where, you're going to have to, again, go wrong, Holly, if I'm getting this wrong. But like you've got 1, 2, 3, but it's logarithmic. So a 2 is 10 times, more shaking than a 1. A 3 is 10 times more shaking than a 2, which is 100 times more than a 1. Like, so it compounds really quickly.
That's right.
Like it's really not fair for us to go, it's a 3s and 4s and 5s, whatever. These are huge differences. And so they basically follow a power law. Mm-hmm. And so there's this idea that earthquakes are somewhat of a scale invariant phenomenon. So like this is the thing where you sort of look at different scales of event, whether it be a small or a medium or a large, a 1, a 5 or an 8. And they're sort of occurring with frequency that can come back to this power law. And so when you try and understand, these huge events, like you go, how can we possibly try and get our heads around these huge earthquakes? They follow relationships with earthquakes that are much smaller. It's just one of these, earth phenomena that I think about. We live in complicated systems with domino effects, and big ruptures and cracks in the Earth's crust propagate in a way that's not always predictable, but they follow rules, and those rules can occur. You can look at mini things or big things, and breaks in the Earth occur mini and big.
Yes. So there is another thing that we should bring up as well in terms of the geogist, and that is this activity that's happening in
Greece,
the Aegean in Greece. Now, I picture the Greek islands as a place of paradise of sunshine and olives and eating dolmades and yummy
happiness,
happiness, and the whitewashed walls and this type of thing, but. Recently, and very recently, in the area around Santorini, there is off the coast, and Santorini itself is like a remnant of an ancient volcano. It's still partly active. I think the last eruption was in the 1950s from, not that I was in the I don't remember it personally, but I'm just saying.
Your PhD was slightly
I'm not that old.
But it's active, it's alive. It's an alive part of the Earth.
In this place, the African continent is being pushed underneath partly the Eurasian or European continent. Well, actually, strictly, there's a little microplate there, but it's another system where you've got a continental landmass is colliding into another continental landmass. You've got these collisional faults. You've got thrusting and things like this happening. And because of that, here you also have volcanism and sort of eruptive magmatic processes happening as well. It's incredibly tectonically complex and active region in through the Mediterranean there, in the Greece in particular. But Santorini, so apparently, very recently, 11,000 people have been evacuated from Santorini, or have at least have left, because they are having magnitude, maybe up to 3, 4, maybe even
That's
up to
a real
5
earthquake.
earthquakes. Yeah, and are incredibly frequent, like multiple per day. And seismologists are talking about this a lot. There's some fantastic, publications coming out right now about this, and they're calling it an earthquake swarm. So we think of kind of as like the power law. So the bigger earthquakes happen infrequently, and the smaller ones are happening all the time. And certainly here in Australia, where we have lots of small earthquakes, they're going all the time, but we barely notice them. You know, but here they're getting lots and lots and lots and lots of kind of intermediate scale earthquakes happening in one particular region, just off the coast of Santorini.
How unsettling.
It must be terrifying, actually, because the question then is,
what's coming?
Exactly. Are we looking at
Is there a hole in the ocean that's going to open up, like in the ocean, in the sea? So, what do we know about it? Is this leading to an answer? Do we have an answer?
I don't have an answer. I'm still reading about this and wanting to know. I think we need to get somebody on who can tell us something about this.
That would be fantastic, actually.
But apparently,
it's not going away, it feels
it's not going away, apparently. And there's a real kind of, and this is a real thing happening right now as we record this in February 2025, just to date stamp this conversation. But so lots and lots of small earthquakes. So possibilities, like you say, maybe there's a huge magmatic or a magmatic kind of process happening at depth. That is one kind of, when you have magmas from deep in the earth reaching up into the sort of shallow crust, you can form earthquake systems, and that's one of the things that people often look for in places like Hawaii or Yellowstone or places like that, where they're all New Zealand monitoring and Japan monitoring earthquakes as potential for eruption indicators. So that's one possibility people have talked about. Another possibility might be, like, as you say, some sort of, strong shaking in one area as a presage to a really big quake that might happen. So it's curious anyway what's happening, and it certainly seems like generating a lot of kind of concern for people naturally, and sort of geologically, it's a very kind of curious phenomenon. So more to come on that.
Fantastic. Well, I should say geologically, the questions are fantastic. There's a lot of people that would be living a life
Very
of
close.
Anxiety,
Of
right,
course, very
right
close.
there. What you said about, just while I'm thinking about earthquakes, which I don't actually do a whole lot. So this is kind of a curious place.
This is the benefit of living on a passive margin.
Correct. Isn't that a luxury?
In the
I do
middle
get
of
to
a
say I don't think about earthquakes a lot.
Stable continent, yeah.
You go through and you learn that these earthquakes are sort of like rapid releases of energy. And the question I've always, like, the puzzlement I've felt is, okay, so the Earth, though, doesn't sort of pump energy around discretely. Like, fundamentally, energy actually isn't a discrete thing. Like, you've got flows of energy between Earth systems, but the way that it's released in earthquakes are discrete events. And it's interesting. I find it interesting to think about. I think in the same vein as what I was saying about, like, the complex systems and this distribution of frequency distribution of earthquakes, is that this discrete release of energy as being, I think, self-organized criticality. So in the same way that if I got a bunch of sand and poured it out on the table, it would form a little mound, but then, I'm pouring continuously and continuously and continuously, but then the sand slides in one event.
Yep.
And even though my input of energy is continuous, that event is actually a discrete thing. It's a bit more like navel gazing, maybe, that kind of idea. But I do think about the flow of energy within the Earth as being actually slightly separate to our experience of its releases of energy.
It's amazing. Yeah, that's a brilliant analogy there. There's the fact that things are happening in discrete places, but you've got a continuous process, like if something is like plate tectonics.
Yeah.
So something is slow moving, long periods of time, tens of millions of years, but they're at the same kind of But as a result of those slow, continuous processes, you have these kind of individual spiky little events like earthquakes.
Correct.
Yeah.
And in the same way that sandslide might happen on a small scale or it might happen on a big scale, those earthquakes happen on small scales and big scales. They manifest in a way that looks fractal.
Fractal. Great.
Gosh, well, goodness me. There's certainly, well, it is actually nice to have this little segment, you know, like you said, the Earth maybe is a bit slower than we think, but I think I do come across these sort of news of the world, sort of natural disasters or, you know, events that happen on the Earth. And I go, gosh, I would like to actually talk about that with someone other than myself. I get bored of my own thinking sometimes. So thank you for bringing that to the attention. And of course, it would be extremely remiss to not think about the people that are affected by such huge events.
Of course.
This all being said, what a fantastic way to kick off the year with this kind of fascinating conversation. If you haven't encountered our Instagram already, you better go do that. We're at the GeoCo. What else can we say? We should have a website up and going by then. We would love if you got in touch with us. Send in your email. We're going to find a way to build a community. You know, this isn't actually just Anthony and I talking into a microphone or to each other. This is actually, you know, the beautiful thing about science is that it's not an exclusive club. This is actually just curiosity with each other. You know, this is actually nothing unless we're all in this being curious and connected together. So we will find a way to bring that together, and you'll find us on our website, www.thegeoco.com.au. Has it shown that I'm Gen Z and not said a website out loud that often before? It's more like, here's my Instagram handle. Who uses websites?
I still use a website.
Actually, there you go.
No, they're useful. They're very useful. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Anthony, I think we should wrap up with a wonder of the week.
Wonder of the week. Okay.
Well, wonder of the 5 months. It can be a wonder of the week in the future, but maybe this is like a wonder of the last 5 months.
I'll throw to you, Holly. What has been some individual thing that's catapulted you into some sort of reverie of awe? I mean, these are important moments to capture in your life. It's the humdrum of the daily life, you know, the drudgery of waking up in the morning, having to eat breakfast, of all, you know. No, but like you can get into a routine, right? But we need to be able to capture those and savor those moments where you just go, wow. So hit me. I'm
with you.
What's been something for you?
Ice crystals over in Canada. Over in Canada. When I've been there previously, I've been looking up at the mountains and shrinking into myself and going, what a beautiful big humming world we live in. And I was there this time and it was cold, way too cold for an Aussie. And I was watching the growth of ice crystal. Well, I didn't watch them grow, but they had clearly sort of, you know, the dynamics of how ice can grow into different crystal forms as snowflakes on riverbeds, as ice that's frozen quickly or ice that's frozen slowly. I just became enamored with the world of, well, the order of the small, the world in the small. And there's just this curiosity almost at every scale that you choose to look at nature, you'll find, I think you'll find beauty. So that was my wonder, is actually ice crystals.
So did you
did I break a couple? Yeah, I tried to pick them up.
Did you get out your hand lens and like a proper geologist?
Worse, I picked them up and then they started melting.
You destroyed what you love.
There's a metaphor in there somewhere, isn't there? How about you? Give me your wonder.
Oh, so many things, but I think I'll go back to the original conversation about the Andes and andesite. You know, seeing that volcanic rock in place is such a. I really was. There's a little bit of my colleague Miguel had a drone on the on that little walk we did up the top of the hill, and when you see the footage, it's just got me. Like we're standing on this beautiful mountain in the Andes. It's just got me. Like looking, just see me, my nose pressed up against the rock as typical geologist. That I was just, the volcanic rock. You know, it's got very fine grain, what we call a ground mass. The background is very fine grain. It's dark coloured, and in amongst that, you see these little crystals of plagioclase and things like this, which are lighter coloured crystals, which are flowing in the magma as this kind of oozy eruptive process happens. And I was sort of looking at this crystallized volcanic rock, which we call Andes, standing in the Andes. Call andesite, standing in the Andes, and I was just.
Did you feel the weight of human knowledge on your shoulders and just go, "This is the connection we're after. This is it."
Well, yeah. That's a bit grandiose, but I just felt like, wow, I'm so lucky. I just feel so unbelievably lucky, and hats off to all the teachers and people that have got me to places like that where I can understand what I'm looking at as well. And I just wanted to be able to share, that joy and love of kind of nature and wild spaces and things like that.
Thank you for sharing. Well, guys, we'll be back in your ears next time. I'm looking forward to a wonderful 2025 with you all.
Fantastic.
We'll touch base later.
Thanks, Holly. Great to talk with you.
See you, Anthony.